Hey, I'm John Cannell, and today on Preppy Kitchen, we're making an easy, amazing pineapple upside down cake. So let's get started. First off, set your oven to 350 so it's nice and hot, and you're gonna wanna melt a 1/4 cup or 56 grams of unsalted butter. We're gonna pour that right into a 9-inch cake pan and give it a swirl. We're basically making kind of like an easy, cheap caramel for the bottom for all of our pineapples and delicious things to sit in. Give it a swirl so it's evenly coated. And if you're making this on a cold day, you have to act fast before the countertop freezes your butter. You also want to have this up the side of your cake pan as well. Now we want 1/2 cup or 110 grams of light brown sugar, so grab your measuring cup, pack that sugar down, and we're gonna sprinkle it in a nice even layer on that cake pan. In the cake pan, not on the counter. Give it a tap to distribute. Our pineapple upside down cake, of course, needs some pineapple, so grab a 20-ounce can of sliced pineapple, and I drained this already, but these guys are too wet, so plop them onto a paper towel just to dry them out. This recipe is actually from the 1800s, but pineapples used to be extremely expensive. So when they became more readily available, especially in canned form, I didn't want to cut the inside of my hand with this can, so you be careful. When pineapples became much more readily available, like especially in the 1920s, 30s, 40s, and 50s, this became more popular as well. I think Dole sponsored a contest and it really set the pineapple upside down craze going. Pat those pineapples dry. They'll still be wet or damp. By the way, if you want more pineapple flavor in your batter, you can save the juice from your canned pineapples and replace the milk with that. Also gonna work, gonna be delicious. Just make sure that your pineapples are in juice, not syrup. That's different. Place 1 pineapple slice in the middle. My mom used to make this cake all the time growing up. It's like a favorite recipe. You can make this with maraschino cherries in the middle. At my house, we made them with walnuts. The little walnuts in the middle added a lovely texture to the cake. And you could even have chopped nuts in the batter too if you wanted. Nicely arranged, and now we're gonna place them on the side as well. So cut the remaining pineapple slices in half. We're gonna place these like little happy faces in the gaps where the pineapple slices are, and just press them onto the side of your buttered pan. This is very satisfying. By the way, if you like my videos, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. There's 2 new recipes and shorts every single week. Perfect. As I mentioned earlier, you could use walnuts or pecans, but today we're gonna go with the classic maraschino cherry. You could use Luxardo cherries if you wanted to as well. This cake is lovely as is in a 9-inch pan, but you can make individual ones which are really nice to plate out. You'll just need 4-inch springform pans. The pineapple slices will fit perfectly in there, and with a scoop of ice cream, they look so elegant. My pan is all prepped. This is gonna come out and look perfect without any decoration. I'm setting this aside, and now we can make our easy batter. Now into a medium bowl, I'm adding 1.5 cups or 180 grams of all-purpose flour. Always best to measure with a scale. If you don't have a scale and you're using measuring cups, don't scoop the flour, that packs it in. Fluff the flour up in your canister or bag, sprinkle it into your measuring cup like it's raining flour, and then level it off. That'll give you the best results. Yes. To puff things up, I want 1.5 teaspoons of baking powder. 1.5. And for some contrast, 1/2 teaspoon of salt. The salt will help you taste the sweetness and deliciousness of this dessert. Actually, the salt helps you taste the flavors so you don't just taste sweet, dull notes. So important. Grab a whisk, our scale is done, and we're gonna mix this up until it's nice and combined. Here, you can mix to your heart's content. Once we add the dry ingredients into the wet, you can only mix until things are just combined so that you have a lovely, wonderful, delicate crumb. If you overmix, it'll be gummy and dense and sad. Set the dry ingredients aside. 1/3 cup of sour cream does a few things. One, it gives you a little bit of tang, which is so nice in a dessert. And the sour cream is a weak acid, which will help give you a lovely, more delicate crumb as well. So 1/3 cup here. And we're gonna combine that with 1/3 cup of milk or 1/3 cup of that reserved pineapple juice. Mix this up so it's nice and smooth. By the way, if you don't have sour cream on hand, you could use like a full-fat Greek yogurt for very similar results. I do that substitution all the time. We're gonna set this aside, and now we're gonna grab a stand mixer or a big bowl if you're using a hand mixer. Into the bowl of my stand mixer, I'm gonna add 1/2 cup or 113 grams of room temperature unsalted butter. It should be nice and soft, so feel free to use your finger to give it a test. It should indent fairly easily. The butter will be nice and bendable, and if it's too cold, just microwave it at half power in 10-second bursts. We're gonna beat this until it's creamy, kind of an optional step, but if your butter has any resistance or is on the cooler side, this will help just kind of break it up and make the sugar mix in more easily on the next step. That looks great. Now we're adding 3/4 cup or 150 grams of granulated sugar. This will give us some sweetness, and it'll also soften the batter. Add your sugar in, and we're gonna mix this up on medium for about 3 minutes until it's light and fluffy. Feel free to scrape the bowl down at least once so that you can be sure the bottom is not unmixed. Scrape, scrape, scrape. Towards the end of your mixing, we're gonna add 2 large eggs, room temperature please, and the best practice is to crack them into a separate bowl so you don't get any stray shell. 1 and 2. Definitely scrape the bowl down in between the eggs. And egg number 2. The much older upside down cake recipes did not use pineapples. They used things like prunes or whatever fruit was on hand. Pineapples were just way, way more exotic until fairly recently. Once the eggs are mixed in, it's time for 2 teaspoons of vanilla. By the way, if you're out of vanilla, you could use dark rum and it'd be very delicious. This is nicely mixed. Now we're gonna add our flour and sour cream, starting with the flour, 3 batches and 2 batches. So add 1/3 of the mixture in, roughly. Mix on low, then alternate half of the sour cream mixture. Another 1/3 of the flour, the remaining sour cream mixture, and then the rest of the flour. Don't worry if this isn't like exactly the right proportions. You're just doing this so that you don't make a mess, and so that things mix really easily without having to overmix them. Just add the rest of the flour in. Mix until almost combined. It's okay to see some streaks of flour, and we're just gonna scrape the bowl down and finish the mixing with a spatula. Scrape that down. Just look for any hidden lakes of wetness or streaks of flour. This looks great, so now it's time to transfer this into our pan. Carefully transfer your batter in. You don't want to mess your cherries and pineapples up. Now use an offset spatula or a regular one just to smooth things out into a nice even layer, pushing any pineapple slices that look like they're too high down just a bit. Place your cake onto a rimmed baking sheet, and we're gonna pop this into the oven for 40 to 45 minutes at 350 or until a skewer inserted in the center comes out clean. If it seems like your cake is taking on too much color, feel free to cover it with foil after about 30 minutes. In you go. Once your cake is baked up, you're gonna let it sit in the pan for 15 minutes so that it can kind of cool down, it's not so tender anymore. And then if needed, it really shouldn't, but you can just run a small knife around the edge to make sure nothing's gonna stick. Grab a cake or serving plate, and now we're going to invert this the right way. Like that. Now lift. Ah, it's so pretty, I love it. This needs to cool down for about 20 minutes before you cut it, otherwise it'll fall apart. So get your ice cream out, grab your scoop, your plates, and be at the ready. This cake, by the way, is best warm. You could serve it room temperature, but any butter-based cake is gonna be better slightly warmed up. So if you have leftovers, just microwave them for like 20 seconds. Your pineapple upside down cake will last up to 5 days in the refrigerator, or you can freeze it for up to 3 months. And just like that, your cake is ready to enjoy. This cake is so fluffy and melts in your mouth, a lovely texture, and the fruit on top acts just like a frosting. It is perfectly sweet. I hope you get a chance to make this delicious recipe, and if you like my videos, hit that subscribe button and check out my easy cake playlist.